My name is Courtney Sullivan. I'm 41 years old, a software engineer living in Philadelphia. I've always been the dependable one in my family. The sister who shows up, who pays the bills, who never complains. My younger sister Lauren, she's always been the one who gets everything handed to her. At our family year-end dinner, my parents looked right at me and said, "Order something cheap for your daughter. We're not covering her tonight." I just answered, "Noted." The waiter, the same guy who's greeted me warmly for the past 3 years, because I'm a regular at the Capitol Grill, rushed over before we even settled in. He smiled brightly and said, "Good evening, Ms. Sullivan. So nice to see you again. Will you be having your usual table tonight?" Then he handed me the premium VIP menu first, right in front of everyone. My parents froze for a second, their eyes wide. Lauren frowned like she was trying to piece together why the staff knew me so well and treated me like someone important. My daughter Olivia sat there quietly staring at the menu she wasn't allowed to touch, while my sister's 3 kids were about to order the most expensive seafood platters on the list, complete with sparkler candles on their desserts. I looked at Olivia's small face and felt something inside me finally snap. If you've ever been the one who always gives but never gets, or if you've ever watched your own child be treated like they don't matter, drop a comment below and share your story. I read every single one. And if you want more real family stories like this, hit like and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Let's go back to how it all started. Growing up, I was always the kid who followed the rules. I studied hard, got straight A's, and held down 2 part-time jobs in high school just to save for college. My sister Lauren, 3 years younger, lived by a different set of expectations. When she was 16, she crashed Dad's brand new SUV into a tree. Instead of being punished, she got a replacement car, a newer, more expensive model, within days. Mom and Dad told me I should be grateful I had a reliable old sedan that still ran. Lauren dropped out of college halfway through her junior year to find herself. My parents funded a 6-month trip to Europe for her, complete with spending money and plane tickets. I finished my engineering degree in 4 years, paying for it with scholarships and night shifts at a tech support center. I sent them an invitation to my graduation ceremony. They were already in Barcelona visiting Lauren and said they couldn't make it. I walked across the stage alone, smiling for the camera, while my seat in the audience stayed empty. After college, I landed a solid job in Philadelphia. Lauren moved back home, worked part-time at a boutique, and spent most of her paycheck on clothes and spa days. Whenever she ran short, Mom and Dad covered the difference. I started helping out too. When Dad's roof needed replacing after a bad storm, I wired them the full amount, $8,000, without being asked. When Lauren's car was repossessed, I bought her a new SUV so she could get to work. When she had her first baby, I paid the down payment on a bigger house. I never asked for a penny back. They never offered. I kept track of everything in a spreadsheet, just for my own records. Property taxes when Dad's business slowed down, credit card debt when Mom wanted a new kitchen, Lauren's car payments when she was between jobs, emergency dental work, a last-minute cruise deposit for Mom and Dad's anniversary, even the kids' private preschool tuition. It added up quietly, month after month. I never told anyone how much I was earning. By the time I turned 32, my salary had crossed 6 figures, but I kept it to myself. I didn't want to make a big deal about it. I knew that even if I told them, it wouldn't change the way they saw me. I would still be the dependable daughter who could be counted on, not the successful woman who had built her own life. I met Ryan 10 years ago at a technology conference in San Francisco. We started talking during a coffee break, and he asked what I did for a living. When I mentioned my job, he raised an eyebrow and said, "That's impressive." A few months later, we were dating, and he began to notice how much I was giving to my family. One evening, after I'd just transferred another few thousand to Lauren, he put his arm around me and said gently, "Courtney, you don't have to carry everyone. You're allowed to say no sometimes." I smiled and told him it was fine. Family is family. He never pushed, but I could see the concern in his eyes every time I opened the banking app. I told myself it was normal. I was the stable one. I had the good job, the steady income. Mom and Dad were getting older, and Lauren had 3 kids to raise. I thought I was doing the right thing by stepping in. I thought that's what sisters do, what daughters do. I kept doing it for years, right up until Olivia started growing up and began to see the difference for herself. Olivia has always been a quiet, thoughtful child. She reads books way above her grade level, asks questions that make me stop and think, and notices things most kids her age miss. Last spring, she won first place in the school science fair with a project about solar energy. She came home beaming, holding the shiny trophy in both hands. I hugged her so tight she laughed and told me to stop squeezing. We drove straight to my parents' house so she could show them. Mom opened the door, glanced at the trophy, and said, "That's nice, sweetie." Then she turned to Lauren's son Mason, who was standing behind her, and launched into a story about how he'd just won the city soccer championship. Dad joined in, bragging about Mason's goals and how the coach called him the team's star. Olivia stood there, still holding the trophy, her smile slowly fading. I watched her eyes drop to the floor and my stomach twisted. A few months later, Olivia had her first violin recital. She'd practiced every day after school for 3 months. Ryan and I sat in the front row recording on our phones, proud as could be. When I looked back at the audience, the seats I'd saved for Mom and Dad were empty. I texted them thinking maybe they were running late. No reply. The recital ended and Olivia walked off stage looking for them. She asked me quietly, "Where are Grandma and Grandpa?" I told her they must have gotten stuck in traffic. She nodded, but I could see she didn't believe it. The next weekend we went to Mason's baseball game. Mom and Dad were there early, cheering from the bleachers, bringing snacks for the whole team. They posted pictures on Facebook with captions like "Our little slugger." Olivia saw the posts. She didn't say anything, but she stopped practicing violin for a while. On her 11th birthday, we had a small party at home. Olivia blew out the candles on a chocolate cake she'd helped me bake. Ryan gave her a new violin bow she'd been wanting. The next day, we visited my parents. Olivia brought a picture she'd drawn of the whole family. Mom opened the card, smiled, and said, "Very pretty, honey." Then she handed Logan a huge box wrapped in bright paper, a new tablet he'd asked for. Olivia looked at the box, then at me. I could see the question in her eyes. A few weeks later, she asked me point blank while we were driving home from school, "Mom, why do Grandma and Grandpa like Mason, Harper, and Logan more than me?" Her voice was small, but it hit me like a punch. I pulled the car over, turned to her, and said, "They love you just as much, sweetheart. It's just different." She stared out the window and didn't answer. That night, after she went to bed, I sat in the hallway outside her room, head in my hands. I cried the way I hadn't cried since I was 10 years old, and realized my parents would never come to my school events. I had spent my whole life swallowing the unfairness, telling myself it didn't matter that I was strong enough to handle it. But seeing it happen to Olivia, my bright, kind, wonderful girl, was unbearable. She was stepping into the same painful pattern I'd fought so hard to escape, and I had no idea how to stop it. We arrived at the Capitol Grill around 7 that evening. The place was decked out for the holidays, strings of warm golden lights, fresh evergreen garlands, and the faint scent of cinnamon from the bar. The dining room hummed with laughter and clinking glasses, everyone dressed up for the season. As soon as we stepped inside, the maitre d' recognized me and smiled. He led us straight to a prime table near the fireplace. The waiter, who'd served me dozens of times before, spotted me and hurried over menu already in hand. "Good evening, Ms. Sullivan," he said warmly. "Your usual table is ready. Would you like the premium wine list tonight?" He placed the thick, leather-bound VIP menu in front of me before anyone else had even sat down. My parents exchanged a quick glance. Mom's eyebrows lifted slightly. Dad shifted in his seat. Lauren stared at the menu in my hand like she'd never seen it before. I could feel their confusion, but I didn't say anything. I just opened the menu and pretended to read. We ordered drinks. The waiter came back for the food. That's when Dad cleared his throat and looked straight at me. Courtney, make sure Olivia orders something cheap. We're not covering her tonight. His voice was casual, like he was asking me to pass the salt. I felt the air leave the room. Olivia's small hands froze on the edge of her children's menu. She didn't look up. The waiter hesitated, then turned to Lauren. She smiled brightly and rattled off orders for her 3 kids. Mason wanted the lobster tail with drawn butter. Harper asked for the king crab legs. Logan picked the surf and turf with a medium rare fillet. Each dish cost more than most people's weekly grocery bill. Lauren added, "And bring the sparkler candles for their desserts, please." The waiter nodded and turned back to me. I glanced at Olivia. She was staring at her lap, shoulders hunched. I swallowed hard and said, "She'll have the grilled chicken from the children's menu." He wrote it down. Mom smiled approvingly. Dad clapped Mason on the back and said, "That's my boy, going for the lobster again." Lauren laughed and ruffled Harper's hair. The food arrived in waves. First came the appetizers. Oysters on the half-shell for the adults, shrimp cocktail for the kids. Then the main courses. Mason's lobster tail glistened under the soft light. Harper cracked her crab legs with a loud snap, dipping the meat in melted butter. Logan cut into his steak, grinning as the juice ran across his plate. Their desserts came last. 3 plates with chocolate lava cake, creme brulee, and cheesecake sampler, each crowned with a sparkler, shooting tiny fireworks into the air. The whole restaurant turned to watch. People clapped. Phones came out to take pictures. Olivia's grilled chicken arrived on a plain white plate with a handful of fries. She picked at it slowly, never looking up. I watched her push the food around her shoulders, smaller than ever. Across the table, my parents beamed at Lauren's kids. Mom leaned over to wipe butter from Harper's chin. Dad told Mason how proud he was of his honor roll grades. Lauren posed for photos with the sparklers, laughing like it was the best night of her life. I looked at my daughter, my quiet, brilliant girl who never complained, and felt a sharp, burning clarity settle in my chest. All these years I'd told myself my success didn't matter to them. I'd convinced myself that being the one who paid the bills was enough. But in that moment, watching Olivia shrink under their indifference while they celebrated someone else's children, I finally understood the truth. No matter how much I earned, no matter how many times the staff at this restaurant greeted me by name in their eyes, I would always be the daughter who could be counted on to pick up the tab, nothing more. I stood up from the table slowly, my legs steady, even though my heart was racing. Olivia looked up at me with those wide, uncertain eyes. I gave her a small, reassuring nod and said softly, "Come on, sweetheart. Let's go." She slid out of her chair without a word, clutching her little purse tightly, her shoulders hunched like she was trying to make herself smaller. We walked through the restaurant, past the golden Christmas lights, and the sound of other families laughing over their desserts. The maitre d' caught my eye as we passed, his expression questioning, but I just gave him a tight smile and kept moving. Outside, the December air was sharp and cold. Snow had started to fall in soft, silent flakes. Ryan was waiting in the car engine, running headlights, cutting through the darkness. He opened the back door for Olivia, then turned to me with concern. "What happened?" he asked quietly. I got in beside Olivia and closed the door. "They told me to order something cheap for her. They said they're not covering her tonight." My voice cracked on the last word. Olivia leaned against me, resting her head on my shoulder. She didn't cry, but she didn't speak either. I wrapped my arm around her and stared out the window at the snowflakes drifting past the streetlights. Ryan drove in silence for a few minutes, then glanced at me in the rearview mirror. "You okay?" I took a deep breath. "I'm done." I pulled out my phone and opened the banking app. My hands were trembling, but I started with the credit card, the one I'd given my parents years ago for emergencies. Mom had said Dad's credit score was too low to qualify for new cards, and they only needed it for a little while. That little while had turned into 5 full years. I clicked cancel card and confirmed. The screen flashed card deactivated. Next came the country club membership, $950 a month. I'd signed up for it when Dad said golf helped his stress. I canceled that too. Then the gym membership Mom used, $280. The dining rewards program she loved for priority reservations, $220. The premium streaming bundle they watched every night. The high-speed internet they swore they couldn't live without. One by one, I canceled every automatic payment I'd been making on their behalf. I pulled up the spreadsheet I'd kept for years, just in case. I scrolled through the rows: property taxes, roof repairs, Lauren's car payments, preschool tuition for the grandchildren, emergency dental work, a cruise deposit for Mom and Dad's anniversary. Every line item had a date and an amount. The total at the bottom stared back at me: more than $130,000 over 5 years. Money I'd earned through long nights at the office, weekends spent coding promotions I'd fought for. Money I'd never once asked them to pay back. Ryan glanced at me again. "You're really doing this?" "I have to," I said. "They said they're not covering Olivia tonight, so they can cover themselves from now on." We pulled into our driveway. Olivia had fallen asleep against my side. Ryan carried her inside while I stayed in the car for a moment staring at the screen. The last payment I canceled was the one for their lawn care service. I'd started paying it when Dad hurt his back and couldn't mow anymore. That was 3 years ago. I clicked cancel and felt the weight lift just a little. Inside, Ryan had already tucked Olivia into bed. He came back to the living room and sat beside me on the couch. "You did the right thing," he said softly. I leaned my head on his shoulder. "I know, but it still hurts." He kissed the top of my head. "It's supposed to. That's how you know it's real." I closed my eyes and let the silence settle over us. For the first time in years, I felt something shift inside me. Not anger, not even relief yet. Just the quiet certainty that I was finally choosing myself and my daughter over the role I'd played for so long. The messages started pouring in the very next morning. My phone buzzed nonstop on the kitchen counter while I made breakfast for Olivia. First, it was Mom Courtney. "What's happening? My card was declined at the grocery store. Call me right now." Then Dad, the country club, called. They said the membership is suspended. This isn't funny. Lauren's texts came in waves. Angry at first, then pleading, then desperate. "We need to talk. This is too much. Mom and Dad are freaking out." I let the phone vibrate itself silent. Ryan watched me from the doorway, arms folded, eyes gentle. "You're really sticking to this," he said quietly. I nodded. "I have to." The calls kept coming all day. Mom left voicemails that started sharp and ended in tears. Dad's messages grew shorter, more frustrated. Lauren tried different numbers when I didn't answer, each one softer than the last. By evening, her tone had shifted completely. The last message read, "I'm sorry. Can we meet tomorrow? Just you and me, please." I agreed to meet her at a small coffee shop near my office the following afternoon. I brought the folder I'd kept for years, thick with bank statements, receipts, and the spreadsheet that tallied every dollar I'd ever sent. The pages were worn from being handled so often. Lauren was already there when I arrived. She sat at a corner table, hands wrapped around a paper cup, eyes red and puffy. She didn't smile when I sat down. She just looked small and tired. "Thanks for coming," she said, voice shaky. I placed the folder on the table and opened it without a word. "You wanted to talk. So let's talk." She stared at the pages for a long moment. "I know you're upset about the dinner, but canceling everything, Mom and Dad are losing it. They can't even make a reservation at their favorite restaurant anymore. Dad's golf buddies are asking questions. It's humiliating for them." I didn't respond right away. I just slid the summary spreadsheet toward her. The total at the bottom stared back $130,000 over 5 years. Lauren's face went pale. She flipped through the pages slowly. Property taxes, roof repairs, Lauren's car payments, preschool tuition for the grandchildren, emergency dental work, the cruise deposit. Every line item had a date and an amount. She looked up at me, eyes wide. I didn't realize it was this much. I kept my voice steady. You never asked. She swallowed hard. I thought it was just small stuff. Mom always said you were happy to help. I said. Until I wasn't. Lauren's hands trembled as she closed the folder. Courtney, I'm sorry. I didn't mean for it to get like this. I never thought about it from your side. You've always been the strong one. We all just assumed you could handle it. I leaned back in my chair. That's the problem. You assumed. You never asked if I wanted to keep handling it. She wiped her eyes quickly. You've always been treated like the backup plan. I see that now. I've been selfish. Mom and Dad have been selfish. We all have. I looked at her for a long moment. The anger I'd carried for years had dulled into something quieter. Not forgiveness, but exhaustion. I'm not asking for the money back, I said. I just want to be left alone. No more calls, no more texts, no more emergencies that only I can fix. Lauren nodded slowly. I understand. I stood up. I hope you do. I walked out of the coffee shop without looking back. The cold December air felt cleaner than it had in years. I got into my car and drove home to my daughter and my husband, knowing I'd finally drawn the line I should have drawn a long time ago. I blocked their numbers that same night. First Mom, then Dad, then Lauren. My phone went quiet for the first time in years. The silence felt strange, almost heavy, but I didn't undo it. The next few weeks were a blur of notifications from the services I'd canceled. The country club sent Dad a letter explaining that his membership had been terminated due to non-payment. The gym emailed Mom that her access card had been deactivated. The dining rewards program sent a final bill for the outstanding balance. The internet provider scheduled a technician to disconnect the line. Each message arrived like a small echo of the decision I'd made. Mom and Dad had been living beyond their means for longer than they admitted. I'd started covering their mortgage payments 2 years earlier when Dad lost his job for 6 months. They'd promised it was temporary, that they'd take over again once he found work. They never did. The house, a big colonial in the suburbs with a wraparound porch and a finished basement, had been their pride and joy. Now the bank sent them a notice of default. The mortgage was overdue by 3 months. They had 30 days to catch up or face foreclosure. I heard about it through a mutual friend who still talked to them. Mom had cried on the phone with her. Dad had stopped playing golf. They were selling the house. The real estate listing went up online. 4 bedrooms, 3 baths, updated kitchen, asking price lower than they'd hoped. I scrolled through the photos. The living room where I'd spent Christmas mornings, the backyard where Olivia had learned to ride a bike. And felt nothing. Not anger, not sadness. Just the quiet realization that it was over. Lauren's situation was different. She'd always relied on Mom and Dad for extras, birthday gifts for the kids, school supplies, weekend trips. Without that help, she had to stretch her part-time boutique salary to cover everything. She started working extra shifts, picking up evening hours at a second store. She sold the extra TV from the living room, the dining set they never used, even the kids' old toys on Facebook Marketplace. The house looked emptier every time I heard about it through the same mutual friend. She sent me one last text from a different number. Please, Courtney. We're struggling. The kids miss you. I read it then, deleted it without replying. I blocked that number too. The guilt came in waves at first. I'd wake up in the middle of the night wondering if I'd gone too far. I'd think about Mom's voice when she used to call me my reliable girl, about Dad's proud smile when I paid the property taxes. But then I'd remember Olivia's face at the dinner table, the way she'd shrunk when they told her to order something cheap. I'd remember all the times I'd swallowed the unfairness so they could keep their comfortable life. Ryan watched me carefully those first few weeks. He never pushed, just stayed close. One night I told him I was worried I'd become the villain in their story. He took my hand and said, "You're not the villain. You just stopped letting them write the story for you." I stopped checking my phone for missed calls. I stopped wondering what they were doing. I focused on the life I'd built. My job, my husband, my daughter. The house sold in early spring. I heard they moved into a small apartment closer to Lauren's place. Mom took a part-time job at a grocery store. Dad started driving for rideshare to make ends meet. I never reached out. They never reached out again either. Spring brought a fresh start. Ryan and I found a bright apartment in the suburbs just outside Philadelphia, close enough to my office for an easy commute, far enough from the old neighborhood to feel like a clean break. The place had big windows, a small balcony overlooking a park, and enough space for Olivia to have her own study corner. We moved in on a sunny Saturday, boxes stacked high, laughter echoing through the empty rooms as we unpacked. Olivia settled in faster than I expected. She started at a new school with a strong science program and joined the robotics club right away. Every Tuesday and Thursday, she came home excited, talking nonstop about circuits and programming challenges. She made friends quickly, a group of kids who shared her love for building things. I'd pick her up and see her standing in the parking lot surrounded by classmates, her face lit up with a smile I hadn't seen in years. At home, she laughed more. Real laughs, the kind that filled the apartment. She'd show me videos of her team's robot competitions, proud when it navigated the course without a hitch. One evening, she won a regional award and ran to hug me the moment she walked through the door. "Mom, we did it!" she shouted. I held her tight, feeling the weight of all those old hurts lift a little more. Ryan and I made time for each other in ways we hadn't before. With no more surprise bills or emergency calls, our evenings were ours. We cooked together on weekends, trying new recipes from the farmer's market. We took long walks in the park, holding hands and talking about everything and nothing. He'd tease me about my terrible parallel parking, and I'd laugh until my sides hurt. We set clear boundaries, no more family drama allowed to creep into our space. If an old mutual friend mentioned my parents, we changed the subject. Our home became a sanctuary. I started sleeping through the night. For years, I'd wake up at 3 a.m. worrying about the next request, the next transfer. Now I fell asleep easily, the apartment quiet except for the soft hum of the city outside. Mornings felt lighter. I'd wake up to sunlight streaming through the windows, make coffee, and sit on the balcony watching joggers in the park. The constant knot in my chest was gone. Olivia thrived in ways I'd only dreamed of. She signed up for summer science camp and came home full of stories about experiments and new discoveries. Her confidence grew. She stood taller, spoke up more, and didn't flinch when talking about her projects. Watching her blossom made every hard choice worth it. Ryan and I celebrated small milestones together. Our 10th anniversary came around and we took a weekend trip to the shore. Just the three of us. We built sandcastles with Olivia, ate ice cream on the boardwalk, and watched the sunset over the ocean. No interruptions, no guilt, no obligations pulling us away. I realized how much energy I'd poured into keeping everyone else comfortable. Now that energy came back to me, to us. I took up running again, joined a book club at work, even started planning a family vacation for next year. Life felt balanced, peaceful, mine. That night, after Olivia fell asleep on my shoulder following a club meeting where her team presented their latest robot, I realized something profound. This was the first time in 20 years I carried no obligations that weren't truly mine. I chose to protect my child and set boundaries for myself. Family doesn't mean endless sacrifice without question. Sometimes stopping is the most loving thing you can do. If you are watching this and feeling stuck in a similar pattern, always giving, never receiving, watching your own kids suffer because of it, know that it's okay to stop. You deserve peace. Your children deserve to see you value yourself. Setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's the foundation of a healthier life. Thank you for listening to my story. It wasn't easy to share, but if it helps even one person find the courage to choose themselves, it's worth it.